Hey guys, Julian here, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to make hard, raw techno like TRYM and Coastlock. As usual, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything from this video right at the top of the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. And yeah, let's dive in. So here's the project file. We're at 145 BPM, a bit faster, but it really brings, that hard, aggressive energy. I think the faster your BPM is, it does actually make a difference in terms of the energy of the track. So I definitely recommend playing around with different speeds and just seeing what's going to work. Anywhere between maybe like 135 and 150 is going to work for the style. But the first thing that we have here is this hard kick, which sounds like this. So this is your standard style of hard techno kick like you would hear in the style track, and the way it's made is using 3 layers. So we have first and foremost like our main kick. This is the main punch, that like the thing that you really hear up front that's creating most of the sound. But then on top of that, we have this second kick, which is a little bit more just for like the high end. You can see, it's just really adding that nice kind of like crunchy clickiness to the top of the kick. Just to make it punch through a little bit more, because if you just have this, it's got like that good it's got like the punch to it, but it's not always going to cut through in the high end. So then adding that second one, it just gives it a bit more of a push. And then this third layer here is the bass. And so the way that you're going to make the type of bass for this style of track, it's a little bit different. As you can hear, of course, it is like your standard sort of rumble kick. The way that I made this is I took this rumbly kick you can hear here, which has like that nice bass on the end already. And then what's happening is I'm actually sidechaining it to the kick. So when we actually hear the bass in the track, all you're hearing is the bass from that. You're not really getting the punch. But then the idea here is you're going to take this big, fat, kind of like almost like a bit round sounding bass, and then just crunch it up a little bit. So that's what we did here. As you can see, I have the overdrive, and then also I have some drum bus. So I'll turn these off and just kind of turn them back on. There's the overdrive. And then with the drum bus, you can hear it really pulls it up and just makes it really big and fat. So this is how I recommend doing this is, just get a nice bass sound and then just try to make it like a little bit crunchier without going too much. Because if you do too much, you can kind of lose the bass pretty quickly. But if you just keep it at the right level, you'll get that perfect amount of distortion while still making the sound really fat. And then on the group of all 3 of those layers together, I just have some saturation. So you just want to do something at the end to kind of like tie it all together. With this group, it is 3 layers, but I try to think of these as one thing in the track. This is the kick. So the saturator, it just kind of glues it all together, fills in some harmonic space there to make it all a bit more even. Here's without it. And then with it, that is it for the kick. Then we have this chord synth. So this is very TRYM influenced. This is one of those kind of like trancey, sort of like almost, I want to say, like apocalyptic sounding sort of synths. Basically, the idea here is it's actually a pretty simple sound. It's just made with analog. And then we're just doing these chord stabs. And you can see I'm playing with the different lengths of the notes. This is something that you want to think about here. It's like, maybe it's not always about adding like a bunch of new notes every single time. Every new time you're getting one of these hits. You can just play around with the same chord, but then changing the length of the notes, or like little parameters like that to sort of make it more interesting rather than just having this be some super, super complicated thing. But what's happening here is we're just playing an F sharp minor chord. That's the key we're in. You can see it's F sharp minor because we have the root note, minor third, and then the fifth, and then we just have an F sharp on top as well. And then what's happening here is it's just kind of dancing around different notes inside of the scale, because we have our F sharp minor, and then it goes, which, as you can see, is the same chord shape, except I've moved the A down to G sharp. So from the minor third to the ninth. And then I added in this B here, which is the fourth. And then you can hear like what those add to the overall chord then when you add that. And then for this third chord, it's the same thing here. But then what I've done is I've added back the third. So we have the ninth and then the minor third on top of it. And then I have this D over top of the C sharp. And that's just one note up from the C sharp, which is the fifth. Typically, if you do that voice, you can hear that's what gives it that kind of chaotic thing. And then once you get to the end of that, it resolves really nicely again, because then you're going back from here to that C sharp, and then from here to there. So it's like just kind of playing with notes in the scale. Like, it's not that complicated. It's just that we're doing it in a creative and exciting way. And then for the sound, this is also pretty simple. You can see it's just 2 saw waves here inside of analog. I've got the first one actually 2 octaves up, so that's how you're getting that high kind of voice in there. You know, it adds a lot of high end. And speaking of that, we also have some noise here, so that's adding even more high end to the sound. Then we have the amp envelope set like that with no release, so we get these tight, fast chords like this. And then I have some unison. We have a bit of chorus. You can see it's not a whole lot, but it's just adding a bit more stereo width to the sound. We have a bit of echo and reverb as well. You can see the echo is like that, and then the reverb is actually pretty short. This is just to give the sound some space, but it's not meant to be like a super long held out reverb. It's just a quick sort of room sound like this. And then we just have a bit of saturation. And that is it for the chord synth. Then we have these distorted effects, which sound like this. So these are just these different little effect sounds that are playing. You can see some of them have processing, like this first one. It's just this distorted reverb thing with the high pass filter. We have like this sound, which is like some Foley sound, I believe. And then we have this one, which is just going through some echo, and that's a little bit more rhythmic. And then these are just kind of like those extra sort of things that are going to play over top of the track to give it just a little bit more fullness. You know, if you don't have these, it's kind of missing some movement. Like, these are the things that you might not always notice right off the bat when you're listening to a track or when you hear it like on the dance floor or whatever, but they're adding a lot of energy. If I turn these off and just play you the track, you know what I'm not. It seems subtle, but it makes a really big difference to have these in the track. And that's the thing. These are one of those elements that on their own may not seem that juicy. You know, this isn't something that you'd probably even find in a sample pack, but it does give you like a lot, and it makes the track like, it takes the track from like pretty good to an amazing track. And then what we have here on the group is just a bit of drum bus. So here's without it. And obviously with it, you can hear, you know, this just kind of gives everything a bit more crunch and a bit more fatness. And yeah, then we have the snare. You can hear that just kind of playing over the kick there. Yeah, this is just like a nice, like, shorter snare like this. Like, you want something a bit more punchy, almost like a rim shot, really. And then that's just going through some drum bus. And then we have the percussion. So basically what's happening is we have a breakbeat. As you can see, it's going through some drum bus, a bit of a high pass. These breakbeats are really good because it adds just like a lot of texture. Like if I turn that off, you can hear, yeah, when I turn it back on again, it's adding a lot of texture and a lot of energy to the track. So we have that, and then we just have these little ones underneath it kind of like filling it out a bit. And what I mean is we have like these extra hi-hats. then this rim shot too, which just plays like that, and then you can hear when we add the breakbeat in. These things are subtle, but they add a lot of energy to it and kind of like fortify it, so to speak. And then on the group of all of those, we just have a bit of drum bus. Kind of tie it all together. You want this to really feel like one loop on its own, like one thing in the track. And yeah, then the last thing that we have down here are these hi-hats. And so these are pretty standard fat techno hi-hats. The main thing to keep in mind is just like how big the sounds are. Like, even though these are kind of like smaller, like high-end focused sounds, you really want to make sure that they're like right on top of the mix. Like, when I was making this and mixing it, I found that like it can be easy for these to get buried in the mix because you have so many huge sounds around them. But you really want to make sure these hi-hats are like as big as possible in the mix. And then on the group of those, we just have some drum bus as well, which really helps with this. Here's without it. And then with it, you can hear. Yeah, it just makes the hi-hat super fat and super full sounding. And yeah. So that is it for the hi-hats, and that is going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available right at the top of the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. And yeah, thank you so much, guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.